Good afternoon, Eileen.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
Hey, I'm hanging in here.
Hi.
You know,
How do I make
trying to
my
get it.
picture? How do I make my picture? Can you see me?
I can see you.
Oh, very good. Perfect.
Can you see my screen?
I can.
All right, then that's all we need in the moment.
Perfect,
we'll
perfect.
we'll make this work.
Yeah. So tell me, who are the people who usually participate in these great talks that you give? Are they the people who volunteer, or are these clients outside your business?
They're usually people from the community who get the notice or sign up. They're not agency. Most of them are not agency people, although I see a couple names here from people who I recognize as from agencies. But for the most part, it's people, older adults themselves, who are, needing or wanting that kind of information. And then
Okay.
we always post it. Sometimes it gets a little delayed, but we always post it on our YouTube channel. And then you can watch it again or you can tell your friends about it.
Yeah. YouTube's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
um, so it looks like for the last few seconds here, I
Okay.
haven't been admitting anyone. So I'm going to assume that most everyone who wanted to join has done so.
They're towing your car.
How
They're
many
towing
people?
Yes, and she's trying to stop it,
Okay.
but they're not.
Well, here's my key. Um, God. Um, okay, well, hopefully we'll get through this and they'll be able to stop. Apparently, I'm parked in our parking lot at our office and I've parked here for 7 years and they're towing my car. So
No way.
we got great new management around here.
I'm sorry. Wow.
So anyway, but one of the staff is running out to take care of it. So hopefully they'll be able to talk their way through it. Okay, well, let's go ahead then and get started. So I am Eileen Doherty, and I am the director of the Colorado Gerontological Society. And we have done this Aging in Place series for a number of years now. And the majority of the sessions are posted on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and review anything that we have done previously, feel free to go ahead and do that. What I'm going to talk a little bit about today is trying to decide, or at least have some conversation, if you will, about home care and long-term care. So we're going to basically kind of cover two things. One is kind of the difficult decision, and then I'll provide you with at least a resource that we have that might be able to help you find some services. So just by way of kind of starting out here, there are sort of four things that go into this difficult decision. One is assessment and planning and doing some kind of a needs assessment. What is it you need? How do you figure it out? Where do you start? The second is financial planning, and that is not something that we're going to talk about today. But basically, how are you going to pay for the services that you need? How are you going to provide for yourself in your later years? Then the research options, what do you do? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. And then legal considerations, that is basically powers of attorney and those kinds of things. And there's lots of information on our YouTube channel, on our website. We're happy to send you more information or talk in more detail if you would like. The second kind of decision, after you've decided that there's a little bit that you're going to need some type of help is how do you choose a facility? Where do you go? Whether you're looking at assisted living and nursing home or whether you're looking at home care. And again, getting to know the agencies and the groups that you're looking to do business with is really, really important. So you are going to want to do tours. You're going to want to interview people, talk to the staff. A really important thing is doing your due diligence. Most of these agencies are surveyed by the Colorado Department of Public Health. You want to look at those inspections. You want to talk to other residents and families, and you want to make sure you understand the level of care and support. One of the things my husband always does is he never really trusts, if you will, when we're helping family and friends, like the testimonials that they put on the website or whatever are in their brochures. So he always finds a way when we're touring a facility, and we just recently had an experience doing this. He will just corner somebody in the hall or out on the lawn, and he'll say, what do you like about this place? What don't you like? And those informal conversations often give us a lot more information than what we're going to get from other resources or other services. And then you want to understand what can and cannot be provided. Frequently, what we see is that there is an expectation that there's a level of service that is going to be provided that is not necessarily that same level of service that is in fact being provided by that agency or that company. So really making sure you understand those services and that your expectations or your needs are consistent with what that agency can provide. The next thing, which we're not going to talk about today at all either, is transition and adjustment. But basically, I'm going to do a quick overview here, is personalizing the space. If you move, if you're using home care, then make sure that your loved one is comfortable with the caregivers. One of the things that agencies, especially home care agencies, don't necessarily do a very good job of is making sure that the person that they are sending to help your loved one, that they feel comfortable with each other, that they are able to communicate, that they're able to understand each other. And so you need to understand that when you bring somebody into your home, you are allowing them into your personal space. So I have to be comfortable with that person, not just vacuum cleaning and cooking, but if they're going to help with the shower, I have to be comfortable with them seeing me in the nude, helping to zip up my zipper or whatever else it is I need. So again, that sort of communication, visiting frequently, encouraging your loved one to accept the person, and then always, always, always take care of yourself. And then the last sort of difficult decision is really the ongoing involvement. And this can be as stressful sometimes as actually, the process of finding some help. So staying in regular communication, doing spot visits is important. Also advocate for your loved one. Sometimes even if you think there's no credibility, if you will, to the complaints that your loved one makes, don't necessarily dismiss it, because there may be some truth to the complaint or to their allegations. So really try to investigate that before you actually dismiss it. So what we're going to talk about next is kind of how do you decide what might be your loved one might need. And so I'm going to switch us now to our website. Can you see the website now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is our website, and this particular tool was developed in conjunction with a volunteer and then a group of other people who really helped in some work that we have done over the years. But my first involvement with that family was very much I know I need something, but I don't know what I need, and I don't know where to start. So that's kind of the goal, if you will, of this particular assessment tool. So if you get to our website at senioranswers.org, and then we have this little tab here called How We Help. And then we go over here to family support, to caregiving. And then there's other stuff here, but this one here is Help Me Find Services. So we've developed this handy little tool, which might be helpful as some of you try to figure out what you want to do or where you want to go or what are some of the questions that you should ask. So I'm just going to use a client that I've had recently and go through this and explain kind of what it is that this tool is set up to do. So we start out asking the question, who are you getting services for? So in this instance, I'm going to say myself, and then we're going to fill out a little bit of information about the individual themselves. So this particular person that I'm working with, and again, you just click on these little buttons, is 78 years old. He's a male. So it's one person income for one person, and it's over $46,000. Okay. His zip code is 80220. He lives in Denver County. His primary language is English. Now, one of the things that we also added to this, because sometimes that's helpful when making decisions as well, is what is the age of the caregiver? So I'm just going to use my information at this point in time. And where I live. So I also live in 80220. And then I'm going to click next. Now this section here, once we've collected kind of information about who the person is who needs care, we're going to start collecting some more information, which helps us to try to at least make a preliminary decision about what's it going to cost? Where do we go? So the first question is, do you receive Medicare? The answer is yes. In this instance, in this individual situation, he does not receive Medicaid. He is not eligible for veterans benefits. He does not have long-term care insurance, and he can self-pay. Now, does everybody understand all of these, different ways that long-term care gets paid for? So that's usually the way it is. You get Medicare, which is very limited payment. Medicaid, you have to financially qualify for. Veterans benefits, either you or a spouse have to be in the military. And then you also have to have certain income and resource requirements, as well as certain other kinds of service-connected service-connected things that have happened to you. Long-term care insurance, many people do not have long-term care insurance. Often people find it very expensive. They bought it, oftentimes they drop it. But again, if you have long-term care insurance, you need to check and see if the situation that is currently presenting will meet their criteria for a payment. And then can you self-pay if you need either all of this or if some of it needs to be paid for. So the next question that we collect information on is, where do you live? So this particular guy at the moment lives in his own home. So we're going to go next then to the next section, which is we're going to try to figure out, as you know, the individual, the family member, what do you need help with? What is that person, you know, how does he present? So as I'm using my gentleman, he can walk just fine. He has no mobility problems. So we have 4 kind of levels here: no help, some help, much help, or total help. Okay. So the next thing we're going to think about is, does he fall a lot? And the answer is no, but if he did, that might be a problem. So we're going to check that one some. We're going to then look at, does he have somebody to check in on him? Or does he need somebody to check in on him? And in this instance, my guy has got probably mid-stage dementia. So yes, somebody checking on him regularly is really important. And because that's one of my main concerns for him, I'm going to check total. Okay. This guy also just recently got a letter from the motor vehicle department that says you can't drive anymore. They're concerned, his doctor's concerned, the sheriff is concerned about his driving. So he can't drive. So he needs total help getting transportation outside the home. One of the things that I also know about this guy is that he does not eat. The last time I went by his house, he had some stale donuts, some potato chips, a half box of cereal, a quart of milk, and a lot of rotten food in his refrigerator. So for me, he's a guy who needs total help making, you know, getting his food, his meals. In terms of personal hygiene and bathing, he can pretty much do that all by himself. I don't have a lot of concerns about it, but I'm not always sure he remembers to take one. So I'm going to check some help. The next one is incontinence. Does he have any bowel or bladder issues? And this particular guy does not have any. He also, as far as I know, does not have any issues with toileting. I have not observed that he's, you know, not able to go to the bathroom, to get there on time. He hasn't complained about, you know, his stomach being bloated or anything like that. The next one is financial, and this is not can he pay for it, but who pays his bills. And for months already, and with his vision problems, he is not able to do that himself at all. So he totally needs help. One of the other things I have observed as I have gone by this house over the last few months is that his housekeeping, which he used to be able to keep up with, is getting less and less able for him to do himself. So he's had a lot of like not recent dusting. He does have a big dog, so he seems to run his vacuum cleaner periodically. The sink doesn't have a lot of dishes in it, but there's dishes in it. So I'm going to put basically that he needs help. And I'm going to hit much because he's doing some things, but not everything. He doesn't need any help dressing. He's physically able to do that. In terms of medications, again, because of his memory issues, he just doesn't remember. He doesn't fight about taking them. He just doesn't remember to take them. So the medication boxes, all of those kinds of things, they're basically just sitting in his house untouched at this point in time. And so the next one is med administration. And yes, he needs somebody to make sure and give him those pills. So now we've created kind of a profile of what kind of assistance does he need help? And as you are going through this process, what we hope that this list of questions helps is that as you're talking to agencies, as you're talking with family members, this should help you kind of figure out, okay, what kind of help do we need? So we know we need some help with falls, but that's not as big a problem. But we know we need check-ins, we know we need meals, we know we need transportation, a little bit of help maybe with bathing more and reminders. And the other thing we need help with, a lot of help, is paying the bills and money management. And we need help reminding him not only to take the pills, but then for somebody to give them. So we know that we need a pretty high level of care. So the next one is trying to help us figure out whether or not the person needs, what kind of assistance they need. So has he been in the hospital for 3 midnights in the last 6 months or recently? And the answer is no. He has also not been told that he has less than 6 months to live. This is basically our question that drives us, if you will, at the end to maybe we should consider hospice. So this gentleman has not been told that. He also, at this point in time, has no recommendation for any kind of physical, occupational, or speech therapy. And now what we're trying to figure out is what kind of help does he need? So does he need skilled services that require some level of a nurse or a medical intervention? Or does he need help at this point in time with basic services? And we've already determined that he needs some basic help with getting his needs met. So in our situation here, this man does not have any insulin or injections or oxygen or anything like that. He also doesn't have any like chemotherapy or anything like that. He is not in pain. He's not on IVs, and he has no open wounds. So what this tells us is that he does not need skilled care. He does not need the care of a nurse. He probably at this moment doesn't even really need the care in like a rehab center. So we know up to now that we need some care to stay, for him to be reminded and get some services. We know that he doesn't need hospice. We know that he doesn't need any skilled care, like a nurse coming in to provide these kinds of high-level services, okay? So now what we're going to do is on this next step, we're going to try to figure out a little bit about memory and orientation. So this series of questions is going to ask, does he have any problems with dementia? And so the first question is, does he have short-term memory loss or early stage dementia? And the family has already had him taken to a facility where he has been determined that, yes, he does have early stage dementia. The next question says, does he forget things that just happened, which causes him to not make good decisions? And that in my situation, I might write often a concern, but I'm really leaning more at the moment, knowing him, to it always is a concern. Does he have advanced dementia? Probably not yet. So I'm going to put somewhat. And when we're talking about advanced, we're talking more that not only is the short-term memory gone, but his long-term memory is also not working. And in this guy's instance, he can still tell me about, his wheat crop, and he can tell me about the farm he lived on, and he can tell me, things about caring for his dogs and those kinds of things. So he's got some, and I see him going that way, but he's not there yet. I can still have a conversation with him. And that's kind of where this next question goes, is has he totally lost his long-term memory? And I'm going to check somewhat concerned, because sometimes when I ask him something that I think he should know, he doesn't remember, but it's not like it's not ever a concern. So I'm going to check somewhat. The next question is he confused and unaware of his whereabouts some or all of the time? And truly, I am somewhat concerned about that. Although he knows that he's in his house, he doesn't necessarily know what day of the week it is. He doesn't necessarily know if he has an appointment this afternoon. So he's got some issues about orientation. And then the last question is he a wandering risk? Is he going to elope? And at the moment, he has not done that. But if I decide, or we decide, that we're going to move him to an assisted living, say, for example, wandering might be a risk. So if I put him in a new situation, maybe. Don't necessarily know, but maybe. So what we've really tried to sort of figure out here in layman's terms is does he have memory issues? And this guy has a lot of memory issues that are causing us concerns. So the next section here is behavioral concerns. So this is things like depression, apathy, those kinds of things. So does he have a major mental illness? And the answer is no. Does he have depression and anxiety? Yeah, he has some of that, probably more often than not, because he paces a lot, moves around, is very concerned about whether he can stay in his own home, how things are going to get done. So I would say it's often a concern, not always, but sometimes. Lack of motivation and apathy, I'd say somewhat. Does he experience delusions, hallucinations, and paranoia? Yes. He calls them night visitors, but every night when he goes to bed, he definitely has people who come in his house and take things. And he struggles with that all the time. So one of the things here is a pop-up menu that says maybe you want to make a call to 911 or the crisis line. The next question is, does he have anger outbursts? And no, he's not an angry guy, so I'm not concerned about that. The next question is he at risk for harm to himself or other people? And the family has already told me that they have removed the guns. Also, one of the family members recently told me that she had a conversation with him and he said, I'm going to take care of this. You don't need to worry about me anymore. Now, whether that was an idle threat or whether that was just him being frustrated, I don't have any way to know. So since the family is really concerned about taking the guns away, and he had quite an arsenal for living in town, let me tell you, I'm going to check always a concern. Again, I might want to call the crisis line, but if he's not doing anything now, probably don't need to call the crisis line. It's just a resource. Does he have a plan for self-harm, including suicide? When I query the family, they say, no, he's never talked about that. They don't think he would commit suicide, but they had some concern and enough to remove the guns, and he made that statement. And again, it may have been a one-off statement and not anything to hang our hat on. But at the moment, we don't really know that. So we're going to check somewhat concerned. So again, we may want to call 911 if he's doing something in the moment. But most likely he's not doing anything in the moment while you're working on this, so you're probably fine. Does he have a current or recent substance abuse problem? And I'm going to mark no. He does have, and he very openly admits that he has a Coke with a little bit of rum, and he'll give you this tiny little thing that says he puts about a teaspoon of rum in a Coke every night. I don't really consider that a substance abuse problem, so it's not something I'm concerned about at the moment. And has he been recently released from jail or other criminal charges? And the answer is no. So now we've kind of figured out, what his behaviors are. And again, we've got a few concerns, but the only thing that we're really concerned about here is he may harm himself. And the big thing for self-harm has been removed. Now, he could figure out some other ways if he was determined, but again, we don't think he has any kind of a plan. So he's probably not a really big risk on this behavior stuff. So then the next question that we're going to try to sort out for ourselves is, where does he want to live? Not where do we want him to live, but where does he want to live? And it's a high priority for him to keep himself in his own home. But it's not practical at the moment because we don't have any way to get services to him. So we're going to check disagree because he wants to stay at home, but we know that that's not really an option. The second thing we want to explore here is, can he live with family? And the answer to that question is he has no family, and there was an effort on the part of a couple of his sisters to try to get him to come live with them, but he totally blew that off. And so we're going to put completely disagree because family has offered, he has said no, so that we're taking it out of the picture. He wants to know if the next one is, can we pay a family member to provide care? And he does not have a family member at the moment who is willing to do that. Does he require overnight care if family is available? Well, we don't have any family. So while he can manage at nighttime, except for his paranoia and his nighttime visitors, we're going to just put that one at a 3 as opposed to a 4. And then the last one, does he require 24-hour supervision and oversight? And I'm going to put that at a 4 or completely disagree. And the reason for that being because at this point in time, there really isn't any family support and any neighbors or anything that can do it. And he takes meds and he's messing all that up. Plus, they're telling me that he says that he's up all night looking for his night visitors, trying to keep them under control. So I think supervision is probably important. So then we have a last set of questions, which is there anything else you want to provide? And would you like somebody from our office to call you and you can check yes or no? For the moment, I'm going to just check no. We get an email if somebody checks yes, and then somebody can follow up. So then I'm going to submit this. So you might at the end of the day say, well, this is not very helpful. But what this takes you to is recommended services. So if you decide that you're going to go for help in the home, it basically gives you 2 choices. One choice is we now have licensed in Colorado what we call home care agencies that are licensed as a Class B facility, okay? And a Class B is an agency that provides help with meal preparation. They can stay overnight. if with medication reminders, you can set up a pill box and they can say it's time to take your medicine. They can't actually hand it to him. They can, most of them do not provide transportation. So transportation still is an issue, but it might be an option for you. In this particular instance, adult daycare comes up as well. But again, he would have to have some help. And adult daycare is basically a program where usually the daycare centers will pick the individual up. They take them to the facility. They're there for 6 or 8 hours and then go home. And usually the facility will provide transportation back home as well. And if we thought he could manage, the other 12 or 14 hours of the day, that might be an option, but this side is probably not as helpful. Then the other side over here is housing resources. So the first one is nursing homes. And basically a nursing home is, most of you are probably familiar, there's aides there, there's skilled nursing there, pretty much they do everything for you. And the assisted living is a lower level of care, as probably most of you know, but they do provide 24-hour supervision. They will help and make sure that the meds are administered. If he gets upset at night because of his night visitors, they have awake staff who can help with, calming his anxiety. And then, of course, they're going to provide the meals and laundry services and all of those kinds of things. So what happens from here is that regardless of whichever one of these that you click on, it's going to take you to our website. So our website then looks like, if you want to find home care, you want to find adult daycare, you want to find nursing home care, or you want to find an assisted living. So I'll do a couple of these just so you can kind of get an idea of how this looks. So let's click on find assisted living, because that's where we're kind of zeroing in at the moment on the kind of care he needs. So we're going to click on assisted living. And then here it takes you to this directory. So it asks us what kind of services we need. So this basically triggered this. And then we have this drop-down box here. So we know the guy lives in Denver. So let's just put Denver in here. And then we can either search here, or we know that we've got 50 assisted livings at the moment in Denver. Okay. We can try to refine our search if we want to by either putting a facility name in, payment, features, amenities, etc. But right now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do the general thing. So of these 50 listings, we've got a lot of assisted living. So we have Park Hill Residence, Balfour, Rose Park at Mayfair. So you can just see there's lots of them licensed in the state of, or in Denver County. So if we click, and then the other thing is it gives you this little map over here, which shows you where they are. Now, let me see. If I put in the zip code, will it search for just the ones in 80220? No, it doesn't. Okay. So I'm going to still hide these options, and I'm going to go to see details. Okay. Well, let's back up a second, actually. So you get some basic information. You get the name, you get the address and telephone number. You can go visit their website. And then this tells you, and I don't know why, I know there's something wrong with this update function on here. I haven't looked at this for a while, so I have to get that fixed. So I can just click on here and go directly to their website, or I can click on this little button here that says details, and it's going to give me a little bit more information about them. So it tells me that they have private and semi-private rooms, they take Medicaid and private pay. They say they're beautiful and clean and comfortable. They have courtyards, spaces where people can be outside. They have garden boxes, gives you a telephone number and a range for of the pricing. And then down here, we get some more facility details. So here we can get some information about their cost. We can know that they pay private pay. We know that they take Medicaid. Now, also, we know that they take Medicaid spend down. Now, I'm going to explain that to you just so that you know what that means. What that means is that if I am eligible for Medicaid and I have Medicaid and I don't have any money and I need to move into this assisted living and I have Medicaid as my primary payer source, I can't move in there because I don't have money to pay them privately for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever their policy is. And the policy generally, when they have a Medicaid spend down, is that you have to pay privately for about 24 months before they are going to convert you from private pay to Medicaid. So that's a barrier. If I had that problem with my guy. My guy has private pay at the moment, so the Medicaid spend down would not be an issue, but for some people it is an issue. The other thing is that not all assisted living, but some take what we call PACE or InnovAge. Now in Denver County, this is InnovAge, but in Boulder County, in some of Weld County, it's a different agency called TrueCare. In Colorado Springs, it's called Rocky Mountain Human Services. In Delta and Montrose, it's called Community Care. So there are different PACE programs throughout the state. So again, just knowing, what that is. And basically, we did try to give little definitions here about what that is. The PACE program has its advantages in the sense that you sign your Medicare over to them, they have a day program, and they become not only your primary care provider, but they also are able to help with they have their own doctors usually, and they can help with transportation and home care. So it's kind of an inclusive package of services. So for some people it works, but if you have a lot of chronic disease, chronic conditions, and you are very dedicated to your physicians and your care team, your medical care team, that may not work. And then the other thing that we've got here is a little bit on, do they have, what kinds of care do they have? So this facility, we look at memory care. No, our guy, we're a little concerned about that. They don't have hospice care. They don't provide respite. They don't provide companions. PCP rounds means that they have doctors who come into the building and or nurse practitioners who come into the building, and you can change your primary care doctor to whoever rounds at their facility. They do take pets. They have 36 beds, or they're licensed for 36 people. They don't have a one-time fee. They had a vacancy the day that this was put together. They don't require a security deposit. They don't require pet deposits, have community fees, companion fees. So basically that's what they have. Again, when they fill this in, and not every company fills this in. So this one we have a lot of information on. We have one bedrooms, we have semi-private, They'll take either men or women, the cost range, and then again, we've been through this. And then they have some amenities that they, that are kind of their sales point. So somebody put in the chat here that searching the health department's website is a good idea. So I'm going to visit their website first, and then I'll show you how to check the state's website. So this is their website. They are part of Senior Housing Options, and they have assisted living apartments. Let's see. Probably have our communities, assisted living. I didn't actually look this up. I should have probably looked this up. So it's this building here. So here they're going to give you more information about that particular building, and then you can apply. And you can get in, if you want to, search this a little bit more, you can do that. And then the second thing that I want to do, which is important, is I want to search this health department site. Now I'm going to tell you that this health department site is very difficult to use. I'm just going to tell you up front. So it automatically takes you to this screen, which is where you want to be. And we want to be on this tab over here that says Find and Compare Facilities. And if you want to know their vaccine rates and all of that kind of stuff. So we want to be down here on Find and Compare Facilities. And so we can, if we do a pull down here, we get all of the licensed facilities, and the health department licensed about 5,000 facilities. So if you know the name of the facility, you can put it in here. And in this situation, it was Park Hill Residence on Eudora. So we can put in that, and we can click on this. And then we left all these others blank. But if you don't know the name of the facility, you can also click on assisted living, and then you can put the county or the city in, and then you can search that way. Remember, if you leave this facility, to always go back and reset these filters, because otherwise it's going to give you what you don't want. So we're going to click on the surveys, if you will, of this facility. When the health department went out, what did they find? So this is their number, tells us it's in a facility, assisted living, but it also tells us that it takes Medicaid, which we knew, gives us the address. They're still open. They haven't been closed by the state, and they take Medicaid and private pay. So now we're going to click on this, and we're going to get a screen that looks like this. So we are on these tabs up here, okay? We get the health facility search site, which is this. Then we get their list of inspections, and here's some instructions on how to read that. If you want to print them, if there's some citations down here, that's their response to that, their regulation, their plan of correction. How are they going to fix it? So then we get, kind of this basic information we've already seen. We figure out who the administrator is. And then we see here, so distinct count of citation code. So here we know that there were some citations and problems, okay? So we know in 2023 there was an inspection, 24 there was an inspection, and 25. And we kind of see something going on here, which should make us be a little concerned. So we see that the blue keeps increasing from 23 to 25. Into the orange, which is the occurrence, or yeah, is the inspections, we see that we have a 6, a 2, and a 7. So that's kind of got a, you know, a not so good down up. So then it's really important for us to try to figure out, if you will, what's going on with these things. So just for looking purposes, we're going to click on this one here, and we're going to see what it tells us. And what's going to happen is it's going to move over here on when I click on that. So on this menu. So it's, like I said, it's a very complicated website, if you will, to use. We see that this inspection happened on March the 25th. And if you're interested, these are the violations. Those are the codes, again, internally. But then it tells us that they went back on March the 25th on this complaint that was already, you know, had been lodged. Okay, so why did that come up with 0? Okay, so here we have a licensure complaint. And what we see is, I wonder if I can make this bigger for you. Yeah, good. So this is a lot of abbreviations, if you will, but this one has to do with personnel, staffing, volunteer orientation, and training staff. This one has to do with resident care services and the resident agreement. This one has to do with list assist, and then there's some final observations. So before I click in this, I'm just gonna, because I'm kind of running out of time here, is these are occurrences. And these are things that happen like falls that ended up in a hospitalization. It's something where there was an elder abuse, where there was financial exploitation. So occurrences are kind of important as well. And we can see that this was physical abuse, sexual abuse, brain injury, and death. So we also know, based on this, that there's been some issues, you know, in the last 2 or 3 years that may be explainable. We don't know that for sure. So let's just click on this. I'm going to click on this one and see what they tell us. So again, it gives us, this is where the text is. And so basically, this is what happened when the health department went in. They looked at it. They found that the facility failed to make a physically safe environment to meet the needs of residents, which affected 24 people on the 2nd floor. And so when they observed bathroom E, one of 5 bathrooms on the floor, it had dislodged tiles from the corner of the shower. The tiles were sharp and located next to the entrance of the shower, which then provided a risk of injury. The administrator said she wasn't aware of this being in the bathroom, and she agreed that it posed a risk. So then we're going to go to the plan of correction. And so we went back up here to the top. And basically, hopefully, they start out and say they're not guilty of doing this, but they're going to fix it. So then we get down here. Basically, they need to say, you know, they're going to fix the deficiency to make sure it doesn't happen. So they're going to fix it. Then maintenance is going to check it weekly, which hopefully they happen in every, you know, on every floor in every bathroom. And then every week they're going to document that they're doing that, and they're doing these safety checks. And then they're going to basically make it part of their ongoing processes, is what this is telling us. Okay. Now I want to go back just to also show you one here for abuse, okay? So this one, so the health department reported it on August the 23rd of 24. The health department, I don't know when they went out to investigate it, but basically they sent their investigation to the facility on April the 20th. So the lesson here is if you report physical abuse, it may or may not get investigated for 6 months or more, 8 months. And then whatever this was, it got released to the public. So basically, the facility said that there was some kind of physical abuse. They investigated it. They reported it. They basically made sure that called the police, the family, and what they found was somebody was holding a scissors to one client was holding a scissors to the neck of the other client. There weren't any injuries. They discharged the first person. They did not recall the event, of course, because it was probably dementia. They increased safety checks. The client A, who had the scissors, did not want to press charges. They were able to substantiating, meaning that yes, it did happen. And it was basically then investigated by the department. And what this offsite thing means is that basically when the facility sent it to the health department, when the health department got around to looking at it and looking at all the documentation, they, said their actions were appropriate, which I would agree because they discharged the resident. And then they submitted it to the public. So while this is a relatively useful piece of information, it also is a situation where sometimes it gets very complicated, if you will, to figure out the state website. So with that, while this tool does not directly direct you to what should I do, it tries to help you figure out what the resources are, and then it takes you to the next step, which is check out these next steps, whether it's home care, adult daycare, nursing home, or assisted living. It takes you to those then, and then you can start checking out, is this the kind of care that I want? So nobody's ever, at least in my experience, going to say, you need to do this, this, and this. They're going to, you're going to, at the end, still have to make your own decision, but hopefully it's provided you with some guidance. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen with that, and I'm going to go to the chat, and I see that we are right on 12:59 here. So this person says, even with long-term care insurance, I had to pay the facility first and then get reimbursement from the company. And that's very standard. The next question is, Eileen, do you change the date of birth for this person as you put 2/20/63, which makes him 62, but I thought you wanted him to be older. I put my age in, not his age, when I put my own, the age of the caregiver. That was the age of the caregiver, not the age of the resident. The age of the resident went in on the first screen. Then the next question says, the layperson struggles with the distinction between skilled and custodial care, and consequently what will be covered by Medicaid, Medicare, or a private insurer. And yes, that is totally a valid statement. The one thing I have done in this Aging in Place series, which might be helpful, is that there is actually a couple of things on our YouTube channel that talk specifically, one about if you're looking for home care, what can Medicare pay for? There's a second one that says if you're looking for home care, what does Medicaid pay for? So there might be a little bit of help and guidance with that, but I definitely understand the question, and it is one that is struggled with constantly and ongoing. The next question is it in Spanish? And at this time it is not, but if somebody would like to provide that service for us to help us get it translated, I would be open and welcome to that. The next one is, in my experience, it's helpful to review the health department's annual licensure inspections for assisted living and nursing homes. The ombudsman can also provide input regarding satisfaction and or concerns about a particular property. And those are very, very good suggestions. And hopefully, you know, like I say, I don't expect you to become an expert at sorting through the health department's website, but it definitely is there. And, you know, if you get stuck with it, you know, call the health department or call someone and see if they can help you. And the ombudsman is always a good resource as well. And then the next question is, can someone with long-term care program, IHSS, live in a licensed private assisted living? And the answer would be yes, but most likely you would not be able to afford the fee for private assisted living would be the problem. So if you're on Medicaid, you're probably not, you don't have the discretionary income to pay the private pay rate, because the IHSS program, which is in-home support services, is where you have an individual who works for an agency, but that person is specifically designated to help you with whatever personal care and services that you need. And the agency supervises and trains and handles all of the payment, but you have a very specific person who provides care to you. And that may actually be somebody of your choice that the agency hires and then sends back to you. So my initial reaction is it would be impossible to do that while there is, because of the finances and how they have to work, but not because there's any rule against it. Is that helpful? Okay, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your attention, and we will talk to you soon. One of the other things I'm going to do as part of this series is start through some kind of questionnaires around how to select an assisted living. What are the questions to ask? How to select a home care? What are the questions to ask? So those will be kind of the next series, if you will, of sessions over the next few months. So thank you all for joining us, and have a good day.